Welcome back to the show. If you don't understand the value of relationships in business, then you're not going to be very successful. Let's get into it. Being able to relate to your customer, whether it's a product or a service, is what's going to determine if you're going to be able to build a solid foundational business. Because being able to do that is going to be what's going to drive people to come and want to work with you. Think about this. It's well known that emotion is what drives people to either buy or invest in a product or service, right? People buy things on emotion all the time. You know, something they want, something they see, something they desire, whatever it is. But if it's something that they really find cool and it makes them feel good, right? That gives them that desire to move forward and be able to pick up that product or service. And you have to understand that psychology if you want to be successful in business, because it's not just somebody buying a product or using your service. It's really about how they feel about it, on whether or not they're going to move forward or not. But people buy an emotion all the time. So when they feel good about something, that is how they're going to move forward. Think about when you go to buy something and, whatever it is, a car or maybe it's a TV, it doesn't really matter. And you come up to it and ultimately you feel like this is something that you want, or you feel good about that whole entire buying process. Then you go ahead and move forward. So that's the way that you need to look at the customers that are going to be working with you or going to be buying from you, whether it's your service or whether it's your product. It doesn't really matter, but what really matters, even though you might have the most phenomenal product or the most phenomenal service, and it's absolutely the best, but if people don't have that emotional connection to that, or they don't feel good about it, then they're not going to buy from you. And people who understand that are extremely successful. And I would have to say that people who don't even have as good a service or products who understand that are extremely successful, because they understand the foundational piece of that people buy with their emotion. So that's something that I just want to get into a little bit and really talk about, what that means to really cultivate that. So you want to make sure that people have a really good experience and they have a clear understanding of, what it is that you're selling and why it is that they should be buying it and why it makes them feel good to buy it, because they feel comfortable and they feel solidified with that buying decision. And that's something that I think it takes a little bit of research and a little bit of trial and error and techniques, to be able to identify, what's going to work best for you. And once you have them as a customer, then you need to put in a process that helps them maintain that feeling, right? You don't want them to lose that feel good about whatever you're selling or the service that you're providing, because ultimately they're going to go find something else that makes them feel that way. This connection is the most important thing that you need to focus on, other than the obvious of making sure that your service and product is good. So if you understand this, you're going to do very well, whatever you're going to be doing, because you understand how people think and why people buy. So if you're in the service business, right, you have to maintain those relationships, and that can be done in a lot of different ways. But, good face-to-face contact, phone, any type of contact whatsoever with that element of being able to solidify that relationship is going to make that stronger. That bond is going to be stronger because they are going to be able to relate to you, and they're going to have that connection, right? Because they like you. They like the fact that you care about them. You care enough, to either pick up the phone or drive to their location and set up an opportunity just to catch up. And a lot of times what you'll find is that you may talk business for about 5% of the time, and 95% of the time is about building, maintaining, and growing that relationship. And that's very important to understand. And if you have a product that you're selling over and over again, making sure that when something needs to be fixed or something needs to be explained, that people feel good about that experience as well, because not only are they going to be repeat customers, but they're going to tell other people, to buy that product. Because, I mean, think about what people say. Yeah, the reason why I went with this is, I mean, yes, it's a great product. However, they had great customer service. They really helped me understand my needs. I mean, how many times do you say it or hear it from someone? So that is the key indicator that people love to feel good about their purchases. And that's what drives them to tell other people about it and to buy again. So what about when people leave? I think people leave for a lot of different reasons, but mainly it's because they don't feel good about it anymore. They don't feel good about the service. I don't know how many times when you talk with somebody, like, why are you shopping? Why are you looking for other representation? It's because, well, I never see them anymore. They don't reach out to me. They don't respond very quickly. I feel like that they just don't care about me. I mean, isn't that kind of crazy to think about that that's more of a driver, even though, everything might be fine. The service that they have might be going well. It may be a good quality service, but the fact of the matter is there's not that emotional connection to it. And if there's not an emotional connection, then people aren't going to stick around. They're going to look for that next emotional connection that somebody else is going to put on their product and service so they feel that they're cared for and that you value their business. And that's a great way to do this and understand it and really break it down, is because if you value the business, right, you're going to make an effort towards that business. People want to feel that. They want to be able to look at that and see, how they feel and how you make them feel, because they want to be your customer and they want to enjoy, right, not only the product or service that you're offering, but they want to make sure that they matter to you. Some of the greatest relationships that are formed is not when everything is going well. Actually, quite the contrary. It's when you have a bump in the road or a problem and everything, call it chaos, sky's falling, or it's something really, really intense. But if you're able to go in there and keep your head, right, even though they may be frustrated with you, step up and solve their problem and make it right, that solidifies that relationship tenfold. Because now they get to see that, okay, everything's good, that's great, they stay in contact with me. But what happens when there's a problem? They want to see that you're going to be able to step up and solve that problem for them. And it may not even be something that your service or product did. It might be something that the customer did. And you might just need to be able to help them out of that situation and make them feel that when they get themselves in a situation that's difficult, that you're going to be there and you're going to give them that solution that's going to help them through the process. And it's really difficult. And a lot of times, it can get really frustrating, not only for the customer, but even for you, because you're trying to work through this problem. And a lot of it may not even be your fault. It might be a third party, that created this whole entire issue. But you stepping up and being able to fix that problem is going to make that relationship even stronger. And you're going to get a better outcome. And even if it's not a perfect outcome, the fact that you stood by their side and made sure that you were helping them this whole entire time, and they got to actually see that, will mean the world to them. And I see this time and time again with, a lot of interactions that I've had. I've heard it from customers. They always talk about, well, the reason why I'm loyal to, XYZ is because I had this problem and they came and took care of me and walked me through it. Even though it wasn't perfect, they were there. So that's one of the things that I think people should really look at when, situations don't go so well, because sometimes people, might want to go hide in the corner and maybe not be responsive because they don't know how to solve the problem. I would say the heck with that. Don't do that. Pick up the phone and head the problem off head on. Own it. If it's something that your company did or service, if the ball got dropped, pick it up. Pick it up and make it right, and just own it. And then take that to the next level of fruition, which ultimately is going to give them the outcome that they want, which is they want you to care. And they want to know that even though things didn't go perfectly, that you were still there and they could lean on you and they could depend on you. And ultimately, that's going to solidify that relationship. So take that opportunity. How you function in a situation like that is really going to determine what your customer thinks of you and ultimately what you think of yourself, because people are going to hear that story. Hey, yeah, we didn't have such a great situation, but you know what? Bob really stepped up. Jane really stepped up. They came in, they took ownership, they navigate us through this situation, and ultimately we got this outcome. Those are the things that people remember. It's not all the good stuff that they remember. Everybody says, gosh, I don't know why people so easily forget, but it's just human nature. It goes back to that emotion. If there's an intense emotional response because something isn't going right, think of the emotional response when you navigate them through a problem. And ultimately, again, I just want to reiterate, it's really a great way to show them what you're made of, because you're just not going to tuck tail and, be unavailable, and you're just going to duck their calls or just move on and just hope the situation resolves itself. It's really about just taking charge and taking it head on and making sure that your customer knows that you care. So I just want to share a quick story, because I think stories are really, really good to, give you some context to what I'm talking about. So we actually engaged with, a customer years ago. It's one of our first customers that we started with, and they had gotten themselves in some trouble as far as their insurance premiums just skyrocketing through the roof. And it was something that they weren't going to be able to afford. And I remember, the call on the phone with, one of the managers there, and he was saying, oh my gosh, if you can help us, come and tell us what you can do for us, because, we're in a jam and we really can't afford to continue this or go through this process. And it's going to affect our business greatly. And I remember going, and the guy I actually talked to wasn't on the phone, but his brother was. And we started talking, and he told me what was going on. And, they had some losses and their renewal was just atrocious. But it wasn't just the renewal that was atrocious. It was the deposit that they had to come up with. And he's like, I don't really know how I'm going to do this. So I said, hey, listen, I have some different solutions that we can take a look at. And I have a pretty good idea of where I want to take you, because I think we can help you and get you through this problem. So I did. I took him to one of the vendors that, I regularly utilized, for these types of situation. And I remember sitting in that meeting, and we were just talking about the situation, and I thought the meeting was going well, but ultimately he got turned down. And I remember just watching him in his chair, just being deflated, like, hey, I had this hope, that this guy, me, was going to deliver a solution that was going to make sense. And now it's just, there's no hope. So we left the meeting, and I said, hey, I've got another option. Just wait by the phone. I'm going to give you a call. Well, he didn't take my calls. There was just straight to voicemail, no response. I'm like, what's going on? I just found a solution, because I found another vendor that was willing to take a chance for, without a deposit, and also a much lower rate that was going to be a lot more palatable and allow his business to continue. And I'm like, this guy won't answer the phone and return my calls. And what it was is he just had it. He's done. He had given up. So I went down to his office and I said, hey, I've been trying to get a hold of you. He goes, I know. He goes, but, I've been really just thinking about, what I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to liquidate, my trucks, and, I'm just going to get rid of the equipment, and, I'm going to go do this. I said, hey, I have a solution for you. I have a way for you to be able to continue at a much lower rate, something that you can afford, and it's going to help you continue your business. And at first he didn't believe me. He looked at it. He looked at me. He looked at it. He looked at me. And he's like, you know what? This is impossible. I said, no, this is very real. I said, I just really wish you would just answer your phone. So we had a good laugh about it. And I think he was absolutely elated. But that relationship was solidified at that very moment. And we had that business for years and years until he wasn't in that business anymore. But the reason was because there was a very intense situation that he was facing with, basically looking at liquidating or selling his business or selling out, right? Not at the prime time, but because he had to, because he couldn't continue, with his insurance solution, and he just couldn't afford it. So we were able to solve that problem for him. And he was a great customer for years. And I remember him taking me to lunch after we got everything installed and put together and everything was, in force. And he said, hey, I want to tell you something. He goes, you saved my business. I said, what? Oh, come on. And he goes, no, you absolutely saved my business. And he goes, I'll never forget that. And he never did. And that is the point of this. When you have situations like that where you can help someone, even though it wasn't something that I caused, it was something that ultimately happened to him. And yeah, he had kind of, some bad experience, and it wasn't necessarily something that he wanted, but ultimately it gave me the opportunity to go in there and solve a problem. And he said, "You saved my business." I think back to that day and that feeling, that connection, that emotional connection of people feeling like really good about that whole entire situation was one of the foundational pieces of that relationship going forward. So just to wrap this up, value your relationships with your customers. Just look at them, make that effort to connect with them at some level. If you want to do it in person, even a phone call, even a text message, even an email. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Or maybe you just actually do it the old fashioned way and you send them a gift. Whatever it is, just let them know that you value their business and that you care. And that will take you extremely far in whatever business you are, because relationships matter. So take an opportunity to build relationships, and you can just start today. It's not something that, you have to make a huge plan for or something. You just pick up the phone, you call. And when you talk, talk a little bit about business and just talk about life and things that matter. Because what you'll find is that you'll value those relationships too. And it works both ways. Thank you for watching. If you know somebody that would benefit from this episode, I highly encourage you to share it. Also encourage you to subscribe. You can find us on YouTube at HeyCharlesBiz. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at HeyCharles77. And we're HeyCharles on Apple Podcast. See you next time.